Hello everyone and welcome to JPCatholic's Faculty Insight Interviews. With us today we have Professor Shun Fong. He is a professional screenwriter and actor and a professor of media law here at JPCatholic because he was originally a lawyer in Nebraska. He also is the president and creative director at the Greenhouse studio and wears many other hats as well. So how did you go from being a lawyer in Nebraska, right, to an actor and writer in Hollywood?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's actually a very short leap from being a trial lawyer to being an actor. You stand in front of a bunch of people and you tell a story and you hope to convince them emotionally and rationally that what you're saying is true, whether it is or not.
Yeah.
And I come from a very creative family. So there's 8 kids in my family. We're all in the arts in one way or another, and I had been acting a lot. And as I was practicing law, I went ahead and got an agent there in Omaha, Nebraska, and I would sneak out at lunch to go do auditions and just pray that the partners of my firm would never see anything that I was in. Mm-hmm. And at that point I was like, you know, I'm really missing that creative side of who I am. You don't get to be creative as a lawyer. You know, having been a creative person for so long, I recognized there was something missing as I practiced law. I was mentoring a lot of musicians because I was doing a lot of music with my church, and I was acting and just recognizing that creative element was really where I thrived, and that was where I came alive. Whereas law, while I was good at it, it wasn't that I was doing anything bad or anything. It was just, it wasn't the kind of thing that felt like a calling. And the kind of thing that really you wake up thinking about every day.
That wakes you up in the morning.
Exactly, you know, it's the kind of thing, it's like, oh, here we go again, you know, and I'd be watching the clock, waiting for 5:30 to show up so I could go home and then do more music or do more writing or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so at that point I was like, you know, I think, you know, maybe I should be examining this creative side of who I am, and maybe that's who I was created to be. And it took a while to get to the place where I felt like, you know what, I really feel like God is calling me to do this, and that's what He created me for. Yeah. It was a long, drawn-out process, and it wasn't an easy process either.
Sure.
When you step into a career where you are making fairly good money and you have the respect of your community, and you know, everybody looks up to you, you have this credibility because you're in a professional field, and suddenly you're like, yeah, I'm going to go become an actor. They look at you like, okay, you need to go see a psychiatrist, you know, and you need to get some help. Mm-hmm. But the more I met with mentors and got advice from spiritual counselors and family, people who had known me for a really long time, mm-hmm. the more I could see that, hey, I was really created for this creative side of things.
Yeah.
And if I'm really living out who God created me to be, I got to take that leap of faith and step into it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a scary leap. But I feel like God used that in my life so that I can help other people coming through JPCatholic or through other places to help them figure out what that leap is going to be like.
Right, yeah. So like scary, but there was kind of a sense of peace there for you?
Yeah, I remember the last week that I had to make a decision, just the circumstances. I had to make a decision that week. And I remember going into my office every day at my firm, and I'd close the door and I'd just sit there and stare at the wall. And I was terrified. And I remember the last day, I had to make the decision that day. And I remember praying and just being, God, what do you want me to do? And I remember the thought going through my mind that if you give in to fear now, it will always control you. And when that thought crossed my mind, I was like, well, I can't have that. So that was the moment I stood up from my desk and went up to my mentor. Fortunately, he was a member of my church. He knew what I was going through, and I just remember saying, John, I've got to go. He's like, yep, you sure do. Mm-hmm. He told me later that if I hadn't quit, he would have fired me.
Really?
That's so he was so intent on me fulfilling what I was created to be. And we all need people like that in our lives. You know, not many people have that, where they're like, I'm behind you all the way, even if that means I got to kick you out myself.
Yeah. The idea of fostering people and kind of giving them the courage to say no to fear really kind of plays a role in what you're doing with the Greenhouse now. Yeah. So to kind of transition that, how many years after you made that move to Hollywood did you start working with the greenhouse?
I moved to LA in 2003, and I thought that we'd start that immediately. And it took another 4 years, approximately, before everything came into place. And I always struggle with that. I'm like, I'm here, why are we not doing this? Why isn't it my timing? Well, God always has his own timing. So it's learning how to recognize the seasons. It's learning how to recognize the seasons and how to step into them and roll with them and let it happen at the right time. So the greenhouse started in 2007, and there was just a handful of us that were meeting in a church basement, and maybe 5 or 6 of us, and we just said, well, let's at least have a conversation about what does it mean to be a creative professional from a holistic approach, not just professionally, but relationally and emotionally and physically and financially and all the other aspects of being a whole person, including the spiritual. I mean, that's such an important part of being an artist, and so many people kind of gloss that over because they're not ready to talk about that. But it's key to being an artist, to be healthy spiritually.
Yeah.
So that conversation started, and I remember just saying to the other people, hey, if there's anybody else that needs to be part of this conversation, invite them. Well, the next time we got together, like, the room was packed. And we quickly outgrew that church basement. We moved into their sanctuary. We outgrew that. And then about a year or two later, we went to the Shakespeare Club in Pasadena, which is this huge stone mansion with a stage and everything. And we outgrew that. And now we meet at CBS Studios in Studio City. And hopefully we won't outgrow that. We'll see.
Yeah. So what are some of the kind of functions that the greenhouse does right now? What does it kind of offer?
Yeah. When we first got started, it was really just about bringing in professionals from the industry and interviewing them, just picking their brains and finding out the question of what does it mean to be an effective creative artist. Not the question of how do I make it in Hollywood, which I think is kind of a bogus question.
Sure.
More the question of what does it mean to be an effective creative artist, and just soaking up all the information from them that we could, and we still do those. So that's one thing. We have a thing called Hollywood Connect, which is for people who are either thinking about moving to Hollywood, or maybe they're in their first year or two, or they're just transitioning, and equipping them with all the resources that they need. So we have a very extensive website with housing resources, a glossary of terms, how do you find an agent, all the frequently asked questions, stuff like that.
So you mentioned you interview people at the greenhouse, Hollywood professionals, kind of one of the things that you offer. What was like maybe one of your favorite people to interview?
One of my favorites was Chris Buck, who was the director of Frozen. He came in and he talked about the creative process at Disney Animation under John Lasseter and Ed Catmull, and talking about that shift from before they were there and after they were there, and how they had created this environment of trust and honor and collaboration and the joy of creativity. That was just an amazing conversation that we had.
Yeah.
Other favorites, Doug Jones. Doug played in Hellboy. He was Abe Sapien in Hellboy, the fish guy, the blue fish guy.
Okay, yeah.
He was in Pan's Labyrinth. He played Pan, and the guy with the eyeballs
A lot of
in his
interesting
hands.
creatures.
Yes.
Played, yeah.
Yeah, he wears a lot of rubber makeup. Now he's going to be in the new CBS Star Trek show. He's now on our board, actually,
wow.
and he just has such a love for people inside of him. So just to talk about relationally, what does it mean to love people in Hollywood? How do you sit down across from somebody who may not believe the same way you do, or who may not see the world the same way, and still value them and love them and draw the best out of them?
Yeah.
If you want a story about one.
Yeah, so...
you asked the question.
Yeah. So with all those people, is there any wacky or insightful or...
Yeah, I mean, one that was a little embarrassing. There was a hair and makeup person who started hitting on me while I was interviewing her, and we have it all on tape. That was awkward.
Is that online somewhere?
Yeah, you know what? Cut that out of there.
Yeah.
Cut that. That's out. One of the most fun things we did is we like to have fun with our guests. So we brought in Bill Farmer, who is a living legend at Disney and plays the voice of Goofy. In anything, video games, movies, television, he's always the voice of Goofy.
Wow.
And he has come to just love the greenhouse, he and his wife. And then he also brought another voiceover artist, Candy Milo, who does the voice of Dexter in Dexter's Laboratory.
Really?
So one of the things we decided to do with them, and this was kind of a last minute thing that we put together, I went and got William Wallace's speech to his troops from Braveheart, and then I also got the scene, the balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet. So I had Bill Farmer do William Wallace's speech to his troops in the voice of Goofy, and then after that we had the two of them do Romeo and Juliet as Dexter and as Goofy. And that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Other tips. You know, at the greenhouse, every time we have somebody that we interview, we ask the same closing question. The same closing question, no matter who they are, is what is the most important thing that a creative professional needs to know or a creative artist needs to know? And we've gotten some of the most amazing answers because they always stop and they're like, I haven't thought of that. But the answers that we've gotten over the years have been varied, but they've always been so deep. And so if you were to ask me, what is the most important thing that a creative professional needs to know? My answer, at least today, would be know who you are, know who you're created to be, and live that out just every day. Every day, as much as you can, live that out every day. And that's when you start coming alive. It changes the answer to the why question. When people ask you, why are you in this industry? A lot of people would be like, well, to fame, fortune, significance. When you start living out who you're created to be, then you suddenly realize that creativity and art is an act of worship. And the reason that we do it is so that we are affecting change through who God created us to be. And that's just such an amazing thing, that we were created with purpose, and the purpose is to change the world around us just through being creative. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
We're sharing in God's kind of like creator role.
Yeah, exactly. We're emulating the creator by being creative.
Yeah.
And as that is an act of worship, the end result, whether we make it, quote unquote, make it in Hollywood or not, the fruit of that, to use another greenhouse term, is always good. Always. There's nothing falls to the wayside, because what comes out of being who you're created to be is, it will bear fruit. It will be something amazing.
Thank you everyone for joining us at home. Please take a look at all the other content we have. Subscribe so you can see more stuff like this, other stuff not like this, but all great stuff nonetheless. And thank you for watching.